Greetings and welcome to this lesson by Growth Together. Our main focus is to help you to understand the English language in the simplest possible way. So let's go ahead with today's lesson. So what is a sentence? Before we understand what is a sentence, we have a certain thing that we need to understand in order to truly know what a sentence is. So the first thing that we need to know is, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words that includes a subject and a verb. Okay, so in the English language we have various types of words: nouns, prepositions, conjunctions, verbs, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs. We need to take all these different types of words and put them together, and it also needs to include something called a subject and a verb. And with these words together, we can make something called a clause. So clauses get divided into two. One is called an independent clause. An independent clause is a clause that can stand alone as a sentence. It expresses a complete thought. So an independent clause is a group of words that have been put together that includes a subject and a verb, and these words all together give a complete idea, a complete thought, a complete meaning. So these are known as independent clauses. And then we have dependent clause. So what is a dependent clause? A dependent clause or clauses or subordinate clause is one that cannot stand alone as a complete sentence. It does not express a complete thought. So this is the difference between an independent clause and a dependent clause. Independent clauses give a complete meaning. Dependent clauses don't give a complete meaning. But both types of clauses are made up of words. Both types of clauses need to have subjects and verb. The only difference is dependent clauses don't give a complete meaning, even though words have been put together in a certain order. And as I mentioned, a clause must contain a subject and a verb. You cannot create a clause without a subject and a verb. So here is an example of an independent clause and a dependent clause, which includes a subject and a verb. So let's identify these various things. So highlighted in blue is the independent clause. The patrol had spotted the sniper. So that's a complete idea, a complete thought. And here is a dependent clause. Who was hiding in an attic? It's not a complete idea at all. Who was hiding in an attic? It just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound complete. So that's why it's called a dependent clause. So here is your subject in the independent clause. Here is your subject in the dependent clause. And here are your verbs or verb in the independent clause. And here is your verb or verbs in the dependent clause. So basically, a dependent clause, it's called a dependent clause because it's dependent. That means it needs to be used in conjunction with an independent clause. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense at all to use a dependent clause on its own because it doesn't make any sense. Right, so let's go back to our original question. What is a sentence, therefore? A sentence can either be an independent clause or a combination of both independent and dependent clauses. So we saw in the definition earlier of an independent clause can be a sentence or a combination of an independent clause and a dependent clause is also a sentence. So basically, what is a sentence? A sentence comprises of either an independent clause or a combination of independent and dependent clauses. In both cases, there has to be a complete thought, idea, meaning to be a sentence. Yes. So if there's no complete idea or thought, it's not a sentence at all. So basically, we could call an independent clause a sentence too, because on its own, it is a sentence because it gives a complete meaning.